take out that commitment card. There's a card in there called Being Rich Toward God. My thanks to Pastor Andy Stanley. I heard his insights on this particular passage of Scripture a couple years ago, and it's just been kind of rolling with me. So some of you might be aware of Andy Stanley, a nationally known pastor, great leader, and he just brought forward some insights that I really appreciated, and we're in this emphasis on I like giving. The thing about the early church that they were known for was their generosity and their compassion. So I want to talk to you today about being rich toward God. How many want to be rich toward God? So buckle your seatbelts, because today I'm going to talk about money. Money, and I'm going to talk about your money, and that's a very personal thing, and that's a very emotional thing. Why is that? That's because where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And so some of you have this connected to this pretty strongly, and that's the way it goes. So I know because I'm going to talk about money that I'll get a little pushback because I'm a pastor and I'm supposed to talk about money, and I have some personal interest in it. So let me just tell you my personal story. Our story as Deanna and I go, and we're a little weird when it comes to money with the finances. We don't do it perfectly, but thank God for things and patterns that we've set up in our lives through the years. So since we've been married, we use credit cards. But we don't pay any interest on our credit cards. When we use a credit card, we pay it off the next month. Actually, we not. We just keep moving, and they can't keep up with us. So, not true. In fact, Deanna, I'm telling on her now, I don't know how she keeps all those credit cards in her billfold. But we do them because how many know those little incentives? Like if you get my credit card, then you can get 25,000 miles for flying. And so we do that. We take advantage of it, and then we cancel the card. So at any rate, we're weird. We don't pay any interest on our credit cards. Another thing we do is we pretty much drive used cars. In fact, getting used cars, and we pay most of the time. We can pay for them only a couple times, I think, if we bought new cars, so we don't make any car payments. How many know that you can buy a car for cash? I mean, people will actually take your cash to get a car. And so we don't. I'm driving my daughter's leftover car from college. It's just a wonderful car. It's a little 205 Kia, and at least it keeps running. The other thing about us is kind of strange is fortunately, by God's blessing, we've kept a small mortgage. We do our buying our house, but we have a small mortgage. It's very much, that's the only thing that, by and large, we just pay interest on or pay for, and we're grateful that we can do that. And then one other thing is that we decided a long time ago that we would give the first 10% of all God provides for us, and we would give that away for God, and we do that, and we believe that, and we give that to the local church. In fact, and then through the years, through various, we still give our 10% through the local church, and then we've added on, given for missionaries, and then we pick up a few things here or there. So that's our story. We're a little weird. Now, some of you are in major debt, and don't panic. You can get out of it. It can happen. You can get out of it. But you want God's blessing on your finances, and we want to be rich toward God. So that's our little story. So if I were to summarize a good financial plan, how many would need help on a good financial plan? So here it is, very simple. You can write this down. Here's your financial plan. Summary. Give first, we save some, and we live on the rest. So you give first, you save some, and you live on the rest. Sound like a good deal? So if there's one area that I would encourage you to follow my example, and Deanna and our example, it is in the way you handle your finances. Now, trust me, we're not perfect. How many have ever bought anything and later you go, oh man, what was I thinking? Oh my goodness. Well, we're right there too. Sometimes you go, we lost our presence of mind. It just went out the window. But if there's one way you can follow our example, do it this way. And as I share with you today, this is critical because we are so much in touch with What do you talk about most of the time? What comes up in your conversation many times? In fact, many in this room looking for work, struggling with finances, looking for a place to live. And so it's a big deal for us. It's a big deal. One other thing I want to tell you, I am very materialistic. I like stuff. I like stuff. In fact, my favorite place to shop is Costco. How many like Costco? I love going to Costco because when I walk through, I see things that I didn't know were there before, and then I want things that I didn't know before, and then I need those things that I saw and I want. You need those. Now, I made a mistake about 6 weeks ago. I'll tell you how it works for me. I'm very materialistic. I went over to San Jose, and had an appointment there, and I went by Deanna's cousin's office, and he's a car sales and leasing office, and I just went by there, and he had this beautiful used car sitting there. It was an '07 Lexus RX 350, baby blue, leather. Retail price, $45,000. And it had like 125,000 miles on it. That's my kind of car. God, I've just got the little Kia. You know, I want something nicer. And only wanting like $17,500 for it. And I'm going, oh, that's my car. Now, I didn't know that I wanted it until I saw it. And then once I wanted it, I go, I need this. I'm driving Devaney's old car. She took my car to New York and totaled it. I've got her car. And and Deanna says she's fine. It wasn't her fault. She parked the car on the side of the road, and somebody crashed into it and totaled it, and there it is. But she left me her little old car, and so I put around in that. So I go, But then I come home and go, and Deanna just brings me back to reality. We can't afford that. Okay, you're right. But I needed it. It's so beautiful. So the only way I found to keep myself in check is to follow give first, save a little, and live on the rest. Now, it's kind of difficult, but let's all repeat that together. Give first, save a little, live on the rest. Now, I know that's complicated. Let's say it one more time. Give first. All right. So there we have it, and that's the introduction. Go a little faster. Today, I want to talk to you about your extra money. So I just want to remind you, how many know that you have extra money? Everybody has extra money. I've been thinking about everybody as I look across. I picture you in my mind, and I look around. I see these young people, they go, I don't have any extra money. I'm barely getting by. And so let me just ask you a few questions to see if you have any extra money. By the way, how many people have any cash in your purse or in your billfold right now? Raise your hand. I mean, we're going to rob you. Okay. Memo, come here, quick. Come here. I'll come to you. He said he's got cash in his billfold. So could I see your cash? Could I have that cash? Just get that cash. Oh, he's got it in his front pocket. $1. $1? There you go. Oh, that's good. No. You got some more in there. Give me that. What do you got there? There you go. So anybody else have any cash? So thanks, Memo.
Thanks, Memo.
So here's the point. Memo, what are you going to do with these? That was like, yeah. So this is extra money. Because you don't know what you're going to do with it until you do it. Am I right? Is that true? All right. Now let me ask you another question. How many here go to movies? Guys, don't raise your hand. How many go to movies? Is that extra or is that needed? That's extra. How many here eat out on occasion? Can I see your hand? Now, is that necessary or is that extra? I mean, could you eat at home if you wanted to? Are you getting the idea? Now, don't raise your hands, but how many have dish or cable system at home? How many have NFL Sunday or whatever they call it, the big NFL package? So you're multi-recording games right now. I'm going to go home and watch them all. But people have cable and they have dish and they have all that. Is that needed or is that extra? Okay, I got this phone here. I finally did an upgrade because I needed it. But how many have cell phones? Is that needed or is that extra? All right, you getting the idea of this? How many have an expensive coffee habit? Be honest. Raise your hand. How many likes? You guys are just not being honest. I know many of you love to go to Starbucks, your favorite. Is that needed or is that extra? You're getting the idea. In fact, we have so much extra that I had a phone. It would even text, it would even call. But a while back I said, I got this old phone and I really need to upgrade and come into the 21st century. So I got my iPhone 5. I think it's an SC. Oh, it's an iPhone 5C. Now, I've heard recently that the iPhone 6 is now coming out, so now I need to upgrade. In fact, we're the only generation so far that we don't wait for things to wear out or break down. We just figure out we got to get a new one, so we give it away to somebody else, or we break it intentionally, so we got to get something new. How many have ever had a garage sale or a yard sale? How many here have a closet that's packed with stuff you don't know what's in it? Is that needed or extra? How many believe you have extra? How many of you at your house have a hole in the bottom of the sink and it has this machine down there? What do you call that? What do you put in that garbage disposal? I never put garbage in. I put that over there in the garbage can. What do you put down it? Food. Not to make us feel guilty, but we put in there the leftovers or we didn't eat it all, so it's spoiled. Am I right? We put down the garbage disposal, our extra, and in our house it goes out into the septic tank. We got a lot of extra. Now, our culture teaches us that we don't have extra. I'm talking to all of us. When you walk through the mall, do you feel like you have extra or do you feel like you're broke? When you watch TV, the commercials are about you need more. So, we feel poor. But it's not until you kind of go into a situation, maybe you go to La Misión, Mexico, and visit and serve in the orphanage there, or you go up to the Tenderloin District in San Francisco, and then you get a little comparison thing. You go, whoa, man, I've got extra. Now, I just want to tell you, you can write this down. Jesus had something to say about extra. So I'm only going to quote Jesus in this sense today. I'm going to refer to his words, and I want you to follow along. How many think Jesus is a pretty good one to listen to? All right. Everybody turn to the person next to you and say, I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there. Here we go. I know this is going to be, I got to keep moving because we could have a long service. We need extra time. Well, 2,000 years ago, Jesus talked to us and he told us what is very relevant. The Bible is so relevant. We just don't figure it out. But Jesus said 2,000 years ago what to do, what the deal was with our extra. And you can write this down. This would kind of be the running sentence for the day. And here's what Jesus said about our extra. Greed is the assumption that our extra is for our consumption. Write that down. Jesus said greed is the assumption. I go, hey, I got extra. What am I going to do with it? And I get to decide, and I'm going to do what I want with my extra. Greed is defined by what we do with our extra. Now, we don't define greed that way. In fact, as we talk about it, rarely do you ever hear if you come to us and lots of churches, you rarely hear anybody talk about greed, right? When we look in the mirror, I can tell if I'm angry or I'm sad or I'm fearful, but when I look in the mirror, I can't tell if I'm greedy or not, right? We don't define greed that way. In fact, we don't define greed at all, except when we think we see it in somebody else. Am I right? Well, Jesus turned things upside down, and then he forced us to answer the question, what do we do with our extra? So, if you'll take this card, and on the one side of the card, there is a passage of Jesus' words where he tells a story in Luke chapter 12. Jesus is teaching to the crowds, and he's in the midst of teaching, and it says, one man cries out to Jesus and says, "Teacher, would you tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me, to share the inheritance?" And Jesus said, "Who made me a judge over you?" But he calls out in the middle of the crowd, and then Jesus throws in these statements, kind of like, where did that come from? So, do you think that the brother deserved his part of the inheritance? Yeah, sure. But he talks about inheritance, and Jesus comes back with this: "Watch out for all kinds of greed." And the crowd's kind of going, where did that come from? So here's the inheritance. Here's watch out for all kinds of greed. And then Jesus does one more thing. He adds this. He goes, "For a person's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions." Those are Jesus' words. All right? So here we got this. How about the inheritance? Jesus goes, watch out for all kinds of greed. Do you think that would apply to us today? Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. And then he says, your possessions do not determine your life. You're not about the abundance of your possessions. So then, all the people are going, what? I'm kind of confused, and what's the answer to this? And Jesus, he goes, when you think, Jesus, just give us a yes or no. Just tell us what's the answer. And Jesus goes, let me tell you a story. And, oh no, another story. The disciples say, another story. But Jesus is the master teacher. He sets us up. He draws us in through a story, and then he gives us the punchline. So buckle your seatbelt. Here we go. Verse 16 says this. And then Jesus told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. And so where did the abundant harvest come from? Was it because of the rich man or because God blessed him? God blessed him. So he had a problem. He was wealthy, and he got wealthier, and he thought to himself, what am I going to do with all my extra? Everybody say extra. Are you getting the idea? Yeah. All right. What am I going to do with all my extra? I got a problem. I have no place to store all my crops and all my good things. Then he said, wealthier, I got a problem. Now I'm going to be smart. And he says this. This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I will say to myself, self, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. So, Jesus' words. I have a problem. I know. I'll fix it. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and then I'll have a place to store all my stuff so that I'll have plenty for years to come. So everybody's drawn in, right? Jesus tells the story. And then Jesus brings the punch. Jesus said, verse 20, but God said to the rich man, you fool. Everybody say, you fool. This very night, your life will be demanded of you. This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Who's going to get it? Somebody else. Somebody else. After you've stored it all up and your life is required of you, and then who's going to get it? Somebody else. Now, it wasn't about, he wasn't saying you fool because he had a lot of money or because he had a lot of crop or because he was wealthy. He was saying you fool because he had the wrong priorities. He was focused on the wrong thing. Make sense? Get it? All right. By the way, let me just say, with some of you who have glazed eyes at this time, I just want you to know, and I've thought deeply about this, but no matter where you sit today in your financial situation, you are prospering. Did you know that, and I say that nobody's guilty, this isn't about condemnation, it's about realizing how blessed we are. We just don't take time to think about it. We haven't thought about it, especially when it comes to our extra. We don't realize, wow, that's all extra. Let me just tell you a little story. In fact, I knew of a family some time back, and they weren't making enough. They were working, and the father was paying for all the cell phone service, and even so, the family would go out to eat, but they didn't have enough money to pay the rent. That's backwards. You're going at it backwards. So it's okay. Everybody's got extra. We just might say, well, I'm comparing myself to them. I don't have as much extra, but we all have extra. Did you know, now some people make less than this, but in the United States of America, if you make more than $37,000 a year, some of us in this house make less, you're in the top 4% in the world of wealth. If you make $48,000, you're in the top 1%. Hello? Are we blessed? Anybody here got extra? Have you got extra? Now, greed is the assumption that the extra is for my consumption. Because I've had extra, I can spend it the way I want. Now, the reason that the rich farmer was going to give it to somebody else was not because he was generous. The rich farmer wasn't generous. The reason it was going to go to somebody else is because he was dead. Not because he was generous. And, I was thinking about, here, write this down. This is good. In this room, most of us, believe it or not, will run out of time before we run out of money. Did you get that? Yeah. Most of us will run out of time before we run out of money. My dad's 92. Now, I can remember him telling me stories because he was a young man. He was in his teens in the 30s, lived through the Depression on a small farm in southern Iowa. And I remember him showing me, in fact, he handed it down to me, his .22 single-shot rifle. And when he was sent out with so many bullets in the 30s, he was supposed to come back with however many rabbits or squirrels he had shells for. He was supposed to bring that many back because they didn't have much. But my dad's 92. Now, he's not considered wealthy by many people's standards, but I just want to tell you, my dad will run out of time before he runs out of money. As much as he's watching that and making sure, and it's not because he has a lot, it's just because that's the way we run our lives. So that's the way it is in this country. Most of us, most people, will run out of time before they run out of money. So Jesus says, you fool, not because, maybe it's not because you have a barn and you want to build a bigger barn, but maybe because you are taking what you have and using it for yourself. He says, I like you, you're cute, but if you're spending everything you've got, then you are a fool. Jesus said it, I didn't say it. See, that's the reason to go, I didn't say it. Maybe we don't have barns, but like me going to I looked at a new car, I saw a car, it was a used car, it was a used car. And I saw it, and I wanted it, and then I needed it. If I spend everything I've got, or I think that everything I have extra is for my consumption, then I'm in trouble. So then, Jesus doesn't do this many times in the parable, but he gives us the moral of the story. Now, it's the last verse on this card that you have in front of you. And Jesus then, after telling the story, and he says, God said to him, you fool, your life's going to be required of you. Then Jesus says this, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. This is how it will be. So how was it going to be? How was it? If you don't make yourself rich for God, what he was saying is, then you will suffer total loss. Because the rich farmer who got richer and then got smart and built bigger barns and said, I'm going to eat, drink, it's all about me. Then he says, this is how it will be because you will suffer total loss. If you just think it's all about you for consumption, you will suffer total loss. Does that make sense? No. You're getting glazed over again. It's like, ooh. Now, how do you become rich toward God? Well, if you read down through Luke chapter 12, you'll come to, and it's all about worry. How many here know that you don't have to worry so much? How many here are good worriers? So all the way through that, Jesus is saying, listen, look at the birds and look at the lilies, and God takes care of them. He'll take care of you. He says, Do not be afraid, little flock, for the Father is pleased to give you the kingdom. So sell your possessions, and give to the poor. Sell and give. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go homeless. It just means, what are you going to do with your extra? Does that make sense? So then he says, then you will store up treasures for yourselves where it won't be lost, it won't be destroyed, and where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, if you have a saving plan and you just have a spending habit, then you will consume it all. So what you have to do is create a giving plan and put it on the front. Now, let me just tell you, Americans are generous. They're generous. But we give emotionally. We don't give cold-bloodedly. We give emotionally. And that's good. So, for instance, Deanna went off to the Tenderloin this summer with our ministry team and came back with a picture of a cute little boy that's in kindergarten, and now we're paying $39 a month to support him in school. Now, that's generous giving, but that's emotional giving, right? So what's going to be the help for us? That is that we decide before what we're going to give to God. Before we get tied in emotionally, the young people have been singing songs all morning about how we're so devoted to God. This is our test. What are we going to do with the extra? Does this make sense? Now, how many believe you got extra? Turn to the person next to you and say, man, I've got some extra. Go ahead. So, let me bring it. Oh, my goodness. Hang in there. Greed is the assumption that all the extra is for my consumption. So when I get a raise, then I go, ooh, I can go buy that thing I wanted. So how do I, like I told you up front, I'm greedy. I'm materialistic. I like my things. I go, oh, Dan, it's time for me to get one of these things because you've had one and I need one. And so it's about time for a new computer. Oh, man. And finally, we got a flat screen TV a few years ago. We needed one of those. It's all extra. We all have extra. So here's how we conquer the desire to acquire. It's the only way I can keep healthy, you can keep healthy. I still have that desire, but here's how I balance it out. I give first, I save, and I live on the rest. And that's the key. I don't give God my leftovers, because how many know that when you give God your leftovers, there's not much left over? You give first. And you pre-decide. And let me just say, give first to what God's doing in the church and what he's doing around the world. Give first. And you must pre-decide. Everybody say pre-decide. You got to make... now, there are people in this room, they pre-decided years ago that they were going to give to God right off the top. You're sitting among some of the most generous people, and that's the reason the lights are on, and I'm standing here, because they have faith in God, and they've practiced that by giving first. Giving first. But you have to, everybody say, pre-decide. In other words, you don't go, I've heard this many times, you go, I'll do it when the Spirit moves me. And you're not open to the Spirit moving you at all. You just need to make that decision for God's sake. So give first, pre-decide, and then here's the deal. How do I lock this down? And the key is I give first, I pre-decide, and I give a percentage of all that I've made. Now, for Deanna and I, we give the first 10%, and then we give more. But I don't know where you're going to begin, but you need to pick a percentage. Now, percentage is not a biblical word, but it is in the Bible everywhere. It's not a biblical word, but it is in the Bible because God honors percentages. Where did you get that? Well, let me just read a few verses here to you. Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts, and then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and he said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions. For they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. Why did Jesus say that she gave more? Because of the percentage. So you need to pick a percentage. Now, I want to help you with this because it's a math problem. And so I have 10 of these. They're called $1 bills. And so I have 10 of these, and what I do is I take one of those and give them to God first. And then I get to live on the rest. And that's, let me go over that again. I don't think you got that. Okay, so I have 10 of these, and I take the first one and I give it to God. Now, you don't have to give, that's 10%, right? You just need to figure out a percentage and give it. Now, I encourage you, in God's economy, maybe think about hitting the 10% mark. That's kind of a good goal. But you give a percentage at the beginning. Why do you do that? Because you want to be rich toward God and you want to put your trust in Him. There are some words that haven't been taken off the money yet. It says, in God we trust. But we are a culture that trusts in money. So I pick a percentage and I give that first, and that's what you do. Now, it's pretty easy when you have $1 bills, am I right? Yeah. You young people have $1 bills? But the bigger the amount gets, the harder it is. So I have 10 of these. They're called $100 bills. And so if I have 10 of these, then I take the first one and I give that to God first, to what God's doing in the church and what He's doing around the world. Make sense? Now, did you notice something? For me, it's easy to give one of these. It's getting a little tougher for this one because I'm thinking about the amount of the money, not the percentage, right? So that's a big deal. Now, how many would like to have these? You can't. Doesn't belong to me. I'll put these away. Now, here's the deal. Usually, the more money we make, most people, the less percentage they give because they're looking at the numbers. They're not looking at the percentage. And so we give first, we pre-decide a percentage, and we pick it, and then we give first to God. Now, let me just tell you up front here, I'm going to land the plane, hopefully. By the way, you get to give one of these away, and you get to live on the rest. Isn't that amazing? God says you can live on the rest. Some of you, I can't make it on what I got now. No, God says you live on the rest. Now, the reason you give first is that it keeps the stuff from owning you. All the stuff you own doesn't own you if you give first. This is a game changer. It's being a steward of what God's given me instead of a slave to the money that I have, the things I have. So, let me add one more thing. I won't talk about it today, but it goes like this. When I give to God first, then I'm inviting God to help me with my finances. Now, I've been pastoring a long time. Too long. And I've discovered there are a lot of people that they handle all their monies the best they can by themselves, doing their own thing, thinking it's all their extra, and then they have a hard time, they have a financial problem. Where do they go when they all of a sudden have a financial problem? Oh, God, help me. And He's going, well, you've been doing it on your own all this time, and now you want me involved? So when I give to God first, I invite Him to join me in my finances. Get it? Good. So I want you to take out this card, and I'm going to ask you to fill it out today. And this is our altar call. This is our invitation to put it all on the line for God. Now, if you're a guest with us today, you don't have to do this at all. And by the way, anybody in this house that feels forced or pressured because you feel like I'm pressuring it, don't do it. Now, some of you need to listen to that little voice that's ringing the bell inside you today. Because some of you are saying, I can't do that. I won't do that. And you've kind of like put on your feet on, both feet on the brake. I'm not going to do this. You are resisting what we're talking about here. You go, oh, it's not me. And I ask you, what's up with that? If God is working in your life and you've invited Him into your life, why not invite Him and honor Him through giving. And the reason that you're resisting is because I'm pulling on your heartstrings, because where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Now I've put you in conflict with another desire. If you desire God's best versus I've been over here with the money thing and I'm resisting, and now he's talking about this, and you're feeling tension, it's because you're being directed, you're thinking about going another way with what your treasure is. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So, pre-decide, pick a percentage. We start with 10, we've built up from there. You can pick whatever percentage. I'm just trying to get the door open for you. And then you give first. Yeah, you're telling me this, but you're the pastor. This is just preacher talk. So let me just give you a freedom here. Not only will I say, test God, try this, pick a percentage, but I will say, pick some place to give it. If it's not here, pick something that God's doing in his church, God's doing around the world. Maybe it's missionaries, maybe it's you don't have to give it here, but I just challenge you to give first to God. Wherever it might be, you say, well, I'm not going to. Fine, just give it somewhere. Give first, because this isn't all about, in fact, it's not about what I can get from you, it's what God wants for you. For you, for you. And young people, this is for you too. If you don't get this down now, you can forget about being solid with Jesus as you go through life. If you don't lock this down now, it'll be tougher the further you go. So, am I talking to you? I'm talking to you. So, greed is the assumption that the extra is for my consumption. And God's saying, I've blessed you for a reason. So today I'm deciding that when it comes to money and my extra, I will give first and save second and live on the rest. Today I'm deciding to give a percentage of all I get to God. Today I'm deciding to invite God to be involved in my finances. And today I'm deciding to give to what God is doing in the Church of Jesus Christ and what God is doing around the world. Now, I did put one question on there for you that's at the top of the card. It's not for anybody else to know. And it's, how much did you give away last year? Now, you probably know how much you made last year, but it'd be a neat thing to know, how much did you give away? Let me just tell you, the average American gives away 1.5% to 2%. That's average. So you need to know that. I put that number down. And so, everybody, this changes everything. We talk about spiritual things. We go, oh, I want the Spirit to move. This is the Spirit moving. Because we're going, oh, man, this is touching me where I live. What's that all about? So this is a great opportunity. It's a game changer. And so I want to dare you to take the challenge. I dare you. In fact, in the South, which I visited many years ago, they would say, I double dog dare you. I dare you. Not for my sake, but for the kingdom's sake, for your relationship with God so that you can be rich toward God. You know, we want the Spirit to move and do something great in our lives, and this really puts the rubber where it meets the road. So, I want you to take the bottom of that card and fill it out. Desiring to be rich toward God, I'm deciding this day to give a percentage of all I get to what God is doing in the church and what God is doing around the world. And I will give to God first. And then there, I want you to notice, I have decided to give blank percent of all I get from God. So pre-decide. This is a game changer. You don't have to put 10%. Maybe you want to put 5%. Maybe you want to get 20%. Whatever. You pick the number. If you want to continue to grow in your faith in God, this is a game changer. So I'm inviting all of you to join in. Even those of you that give faithfully in this church family, you fill it out too. And then I've decided to give to and put in there where you're going to give it. Maybe it's your favorite missionary. Maybe you don't need to give it to your TV evangelist. But anyway, you can. I've decided to give, and you can pick where you're going to give. Then I want you to put your name there and the date, and you sign it. You with me? All right. Have you had time to write on it? Are you doing this? So I want to invite you to join with me and join in. Now, if you're guests, you've been around, don't panic. I'll get your billfold later. So, everybody got this? Now, I'm going to go through these cards. You turn them in because I'm looking for your name. And if I don't see your name, I'm coming after you. No, not in a mean way. But this is God's way. Listen, this is God's way, isn't it? To the saints, is this not God's way? So pull that off and tear it. Heavenly Father, thank you for such a relevant topic for us. Thank you for all the extra we have in our life. All the extra. Even to the person in the room that feels like they've got the least compared to everybody else. You've blessed us all. From the poorest to the richest, it's all about you. And we just want to put our trust in you, even in our money. And so we pre-decide we're going to give to you first. And we'll give a certain percent. And then we will save a little and we will live on the rest. We want you to be involved in our finances. We want you to help us, knowing that we cannot serve both you, God, and the spirit of money because it's tearing us apart, takes us in different directions. But through this, following the words of Jesus and acting by faith, may we open up the windows of heaven and begin to see greater blessings than we've ever known before. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for joining with us today in our streaming of our service and our message. We're grateful that you joined with us. And if we can serve in any way, we'd be glad to do that. Just check out our website. That'll get you connected in any way that you might like to. And that is greenvalleychurch.net. And we wish you the best and know that you really do matter to God. Have a great day.